I'm the most least brand.
Least
That's
brand
why I wear
person.
shirts that don't have brands on them because I'm the opposite of branding. I hate branding.
That could be a really good, interesting talking point there, because I'm the exact same. So we could say, apart from supporting my brother's brand,
I know. I just thought. It was
but you're
funny.
right. It's like how does a brand sell to somebody that doesn't have a taste in brands, that doesn't want a brand? Do you do a no-name brand? Do you do a label-less brand?
Well, you have a brand on it, but you do it like, on a tag that's on the inside. So like because you obviously need to have a brand name for recognition's sake. I'm wearing. Oh, where'd you get that shirt, bro? Oh, it's blah blah brand.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
it can't just be nameless.
Yeah.
It's just oh, it doesn't exist.
I yeah. I just found this shirt lying on the floor. No, but like having a shirt like. I don't know why we're talking about shirts, but fuck it.
Yeah, let's go shirts.
So, like, I like shirts that don't have, I don't want to be a walking billboard. I'm not a walking advertisement. I kind of like the style of them.
I don't know, being anonymous, like in terms of not showing off the brand that you're wearing, because like I'd rather have not something that every other person has had. Like when I was DJing, I got this shirt that had it was black and had all these Donald Duck faces all over it. It was just covered in Donald Duck. Right. And apart from the fact that Donald Duck is one of the biggest brands that there is, I liked it because it was from this really unique store that there wasn't very many of them. So I was like, oh, okay, I can just, wear this, and I'm not going to go out to the club and see the same person in the crowd wearing my shirt. And then it just it was kind of like a brand thing. And I was like, all right, I need to dress a certain way and just have clothes that aren't just Supreme or Louis Vuitton.
I like the minimalist branding style where they, they leave their little mark somewhere, like an embroidery, whatever it's called, mark somewhere, or a little on the tag on the back, but it just looks like, a cool color or a cool pattern. I like the kind of tie-dye, acid wash kind of shirts. I like the loose.
Acid wash is what you're wearing right now.
Yeah, I like the loose fitting, but tighter up top, kind of baggy mixed with a tight shirt kind of.
Yeah, well, that's true, because we've been looking into merch and then, I guess, well, we may as well intro this whole episode.
Something to scream about! I was just
Good afternoon, everybody.
Oh, yeah, I forgot we didn't do that.
Welcome to Something to Scream About, episode 29. You'll be seeing this. We're recording it slightly early, and it's slightly early because I will be overseas currently at this point whilst you are seeing it pop out. So, yep, I'll be jet setting around the world again and leaving Cam to do all the work. So, welcome to the episode. Today we have a special guest, Jamie, who is from FREND, the design, branding, graphics. I don't know how I'm going to let him describe it.
Yeah.
But it's graphic design and branding business. And I'm actually wearing one of their shirts right now. Shout out to FREND. So, Jamie's my brother as well. Side note.
I didn't get any free merch, so.
Yeah, so you're obviously not, yeah. But yeah, let's talk about merchandise quickly because, Jamie has done this shirt and it's a heavy fit, cotton.
Heavy cotton,
thick cotton. And I think a lot of band tees are starting to use the heavy cotton feel. I think personally,
no more Gildan.
Yeah, there's no more basic. Sorry, as Gildan. Yeah. Well, they're cheap and fine.
Hey, our first to sort of use band shirts were Gildan. I'm pretty sure.
So it's you just got to start somewhere. Cheaper clothes are going to be easier to get.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, they've gone for more premium quality stuff because they're trying to be a more high-end brand. And, they've gone for taking the labels out and restitching in their own labels and all of this kind of stuff and making garments. We could actually talk to him a bit about that side of what he's done putting these together.
Yeah, I mean, I've done so much extensive research, man, and it's one of those things where I've done so much research on and I haven't pulled the trigger on it, which is normally I pull the trigger on everything that I research, but merch is one of those things where it's so, I mean, it's easy to pull the trigger on if you want to just do generic stuff and if you just want to, get generic merch out there. But obviously, being in how we are in the band, where I want to do everything at the highest of the ability and stand out and be unique. And because like what we're talking about, we want to do fashionable stuff that you would actually wear because it looks cool, not just because it's got distorted views on it.
That's right. It's not about promoting the band necessarily. It's about being a nice piece of clothing.
Yeah, it's like, that singlet is really cool. It feels breezy. It's like I can wear it in summer.
Breezy,
baby. And, all that other shirt is cool because it's like, it's tight fitting. And when I go to the gym and get a pump, it like fucking sucks onto my biceps. And like, I like it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you love it sucking on your biceps.
That's right.
Yeah, that's right. But then you have to outlay a large chunk of money to get a bulk amount of shirts to get them cheaper, so you're not paying a huge amount, which is why people decide to drop ship, and then you're not making as much money on each shirt, and it's like, is it even worth it?
But then you're not also sitting on a bunch of stock.
Yes.
Like we are.
Yeah, so you buy shirts and then you've got stock sitting there because nobody likes your music.
Oh, God.
It's fine. Woo. Band struggles. So I thought maybe we can chat to Jamie a little bit about like kind of his thought into the creating a clothing line, and maybe that kind of thing can come in through the conversation as well. But we're going to be talking all things branding, how to sort of think about your visual identity. We spoke about visual side of things, but this is more a brand side of things where you're getting shots done, you're choosing the types of fonts and colors and like lighting schemes, even in your color palettes. Yeah, the whole mood board of who you are as an artist or a band or a brand or an identity, whoever it is. So I think there's no other like housekeeping I think we need to go over. We should just go straight into the conversation. Bless you.
I mean, it's the same housekeeping every bloody week until you guys see something. I mean, if we have something important to tell you, we'll let you know. But at the moment, it's just making music, doing all the visuals, getting multiple songs ahead of time so that when we do put songs out, we can kind of pump them out. Like, we don't want to do like one song and then disappear for 2 years. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So,
cool. Well, without further ado, let's jump straight into the conversation with Jamie from FREND.
Something to scream about!
All right, everybody, welcome in. This is Jamie from FREND, and thanks for joining us, Jamie. You also happen to be my brother, so we know each other very well. But yeah, I thought it'd be awesome to get you on because you're doing some really cool things in the design branding world, and I think that it can be really helpful for people in our world to kind of hear what you've got to say and make any kind of crossovers that might be relevant. So, do you want to introduce yourself and FREND and who you are and what you are?
Sure. Thanks for having me on, guys. It's exciting to be here. So FREND is first and foremost, I guess, a creative studio or a creative agency at its core, and that's the way it started. Might not be the way that it goes in the end, but at the moment, it still very much is a client-based sort of business. So we run like creative offerings like photography, videography, video editing, video animation, branding design, graphic design, all the kind of good stuff that an agency would do. And it's run by myself and my good friend, Cameron. So, yeah.
We both have a Cam friend.
And my brother's name's Jamie too.
No way.
This is just weird.
So it's been going now for 2 years. And it started off as a kind of like self project by myself, something that I started solely, but then plugged Cam in because I knew what skill sets he had. And I'm kind of more of a photographer and a videographer, and he's more of a designer and more of an artist. So we combined our skill sets and created a few offerings, and it kind of took off from there. And once we started putting work out, it kind of got traction, got noticed, and and then it's just kind of evolved from that to where it is now, where we're kind of creating more of our own things and trying to be more self-sufficient in the design world and sell our own assets and our own design IP and try and make money that way rather than always relying on clients. And that's led us to things like merchandising and things like selling, presets and selling photography courses and fonts, all kinds of things that we sell, and trying to, break up the income streams, essentially trying to get more income streams, because clients are obviously a main source of income and they always will be, but clients aren't always the best thing that you want to deal with day to day to day to day. So we wanted to see if we could switch that up.
Yeah, and if the clients disappear, you don't have any work, so you need some sort of self-sufficiency.
Yeah,
multiple sources of income is definitely important. Can definitely relate to that with the music studio. From having bands come in, then rappers come in, and singers come in, but then sometimes they drop off. So it's always good having different ways. I've been making packs myself, trying to get into the video game industry, and I've done like zombie noises and stuff, like literally making myself sound like a zombie and stuff, and piano, like orchestra stuff for like video games. And you gotta have different avenues, and plus the same thing as dealing with clients all the time, it can be very
I think they're always going to be there for us, clients. Like even the last 6 months or so, we've definitely decreased the amount of clients that we say yes to, and like we've decreased the client work, but it still comes in because you're still putting out a product that people are wanting at the end of the day. So we still get a lot of knocks on the door, but it's nice to not have to say yes to absolutely everything now, because we have other streams of revenue. So not always just being at the beck and call to all of your clients. So
yeah, that's true. And now you have, in terms of like designing stuff for clients that come in and things like I know you started off working for like Foods and things in a food company, that designing, and so you learn a lot of your skills from someone else's, like branding and how they run things and all of this kind of stuff. Then when you're trying to like create a brand for somebody that's new, it's like, I imagine it's very different to going from working for the same client over and over again, knowing their assets, knowing their, the way they do things and how they're getting out there, to having to adapt every single situation to a new client, to a new situation. I guess my question is more kind of like, when you're creating this brand for a new person, what are the kinds of things that you're thinking about representing that representing that business, for example? How do you represent that business best in the branding?
Well, we have to have an understanding of where they want to go. So we always kick everything off with trying to understand the most about their brand that we can, and where their head's at with where they want to take it. So if they're a new brand or they're a new business wanting to start off, we need to know what their goals are, their ambitions are, where they want to position themselves in the market, what they want to look like, what they want to be represented as, all these kind of things. And then we start to be able to paint a picture of what their brand identity will look like in the market. So we always have a kickoff, like half an hour sort of chat, similar to what we were doing right now, where we're just like, we need to understand all of those kind of things, so then we can get a better understanding of what we're going to create for them, essentially. And that changes drastically whether they want to, some clients just want something new. They go, they don't like what they've currently got. They just want something new. And that's, I guess, a little bit easier. But then sometimes you get people that just they want to be like, we want to be the best of the best in this particular market or avenue. And then, you got to work out, okay, what does that actually look like? What does that actually mean? So it's just a lot of time understanding them, because if they just come to us and go, we want a new brand, a new look, a new project, go away and run with it, we could come up with 20 different things that they don't even like. So you've really got to get into their heads and understand where they want to take it.
Yeah, true. Because then you might get people that come in are very, very specific as to what they want, and they're saying, we need exactly this. And then you're having a very tight parameters to be fitting into. And then you might get some people go, oh, we just love what you do. Just, do your thing.
That's a dangerous one. That's a dangerous one too, because that happens a lot. And because we get a lot of clients that come to us and say, we love your work. We'd love you to do what you guys do. And then at the end of the day, they still have a picture in their head of what they want. So if you don't get that out of them at the very, very start, it comes out later. And then they've trusted you to do what you do, but it's still in their head. Even though they like it, it's not what they envision. So you have to get that vision out of their head and understand what they actually are wanting, because that's when you get in. that's when you get into the iterations and the variations, and handover can be a nightmare. So it's really important you get a pretty good picture and you spell it all out at the start. Like, what are we creating together here?
Yeah.
So that in the back end of the journey, it's not, held up.
Yeah, we've had to think about that in terms of like what makes us visually and like brand identity, like what represents us, and how do we want people to like think of us when they first come across us. And that's not necessarily a question that we thought about first up. It was like, let's just write music, and there's a lot of bands and stuff and artists will come in and just go, I just write music, like let's just go in and start doing it. And they don't sit down and go, hang on, like who do we want to be thought of, and like how do we want to be portrayed, and all of this kind of stuff. So it's like, I just think it's good to talk about how important it is to think about these things before you set out, putting hours and hours into different design projects.
And it's something that we're still working on as our own business, as Friend. Like, what does Friend look like? Because we're always servicing other people. We're always doing it for other people. We haven't internally done it to ourselves, really, to an extent. We know what kind of vibe we portray, or what kind of look we'd have to a stranger, but like we haven't really dived that deep into it ourselves and been like, okay, well, what do we want people to think of when they think of Friend? Because we're trying to transition more out of an agency business into being more of a brand model. So like, we want to be able to sell you guys a mug that has Friend on it, but it doesn't necessarily matter about the mug. We just want you want to buy it because it's a Friend mug. That's where we want to get to, is that Friend as the name and as a brand has that reach and has that hit to anyone, because you just buy into what we are. You buy into our vibe, our aesthetic, all those kind of things, and we need to work out what that is as well, because that takes a while.
Yeah, and you are also adaptive. So you're doing work with food one week, and then you're doing it with like, I don't know, ice cream. I suppose it's still food.
You did skins for Call of Duty.
Like, I know Cam's like interested in that. It's like maybe like we might go into a few different of your projects like in a bit, but like that kind of balancing between different projects means that on one hand you're a graffiti art on a COD gun, and then one hand you're a nice cup of coffee, and then you've got a martini, and then there's like a nice car, and it's like so many different looks, but you still have to put the Friend branding on it. So
is Friend just merch at the moment?
No,
well,
Friend got to be more than
online store. Yeah. So
see, this is a perfect point. So what you just brought up there is a perfect example of what we would need to do better to portray what Friend is. So I would want you to know what Friend is without having to be like, is Friend merchandise? Is Friend an agency? Is Friend a studio? All these kind of things. So this is the thing that I'm working on at the moment, is trying to what does Friend look like or portray itself to be? And that's our own branding journey that we're doing ourselves. And it is difficult to do because we are obviously still full-time working on client work. Pretty much 80% of our weeks is just like doing stuff for other people, so we don't have a lot of time in our weeks to actually work on that and put out content that speaks to that. So that's the hard shift for us, is to like really push that message out.
Because my understanding is like, for example, I've walked in with this shirt on today, Cam's seen it, goes, oh, who's Friend, whatever. They might just be like, their first impression is on the shirt. So it might be, oh, that's a shirt thing. But then the first impression they might see is the Call of Duty skin or something. So they still are asking what is it, or their first impression is still based on where they see it. But you're hoping to channel them maybe into your like home base, which might be a website, or it might be, like you've got your Instagram and things that you guys do where you really kind of give a big broad idea of the kind of stuff that you do, and it's a lot easier to see once you jump into your like home place, wherever that may be, landing page.
I think it's difficult for people to understand as well, because we're kind of a model at the moment that not a lot of things are. We're two entities at the moment, where we're a store, as in like you can buy things off us. We sell digital assets, we sell fonts, we sell presets, we sell assets for designers to use. And then we're also an agency for people to come to, and we do work. And then we're also selling clothing and trying to sort of be a clothing line. So there's lots of things going on. And at one hand, I really like that. And it's like, it's fun for us to do. And it has lots of different arms, but at the same time, it's confusing for a lot of people to really get to grips on what it is, because not many people are used to like you being multiple things at one time. It's like, oh, how can you be that if you're this, or vice versa? And I think trying to strike that balance is really difficult.
It's kind of like
Because
what we do with the music.
yeah. I mean, because you guys are a band and you're doing a podcast. I mean, straight away, that's two different things that not many people would sort of say go hand in hand. But like, why can't they? Do you know what I mean? Like, we're living in an age where you can do so many different things, and I like that. I think it's cool to have so many different things that we do.
And we were speaking about how that adds to our brand as a entity with the sort of views and there's something to scream about. It's more just like we get, as Cam said, it was, you know, maybe you can say it about how you were on stage as one presence and then...
Yeah, I was saying that, that was off air, wasn't it? That was before.
Yeah.
We were talking before, and I was just explaining how when we're on stage there's a viewership of how you see us on stage and how you perceive us, and that is... Like I use the word God, but that's just, you know, like like when you look at a celebrity, you're like, oh my, like if Eminem was rapping in front of me, I'm like, oh my God, that's like amazing.
A certain aura.
Yes, and then off stage, you know, and on the podcast, they're just dudes talking, and they're talking about things they're passionate about, and they're sharing insight and knowledge that they've accumulated over years of being in the industry, and you're like, oh, they're just dudes, like they're just... You know, dudes and girls are just like are passionate about stuff, and you see the human side.
That's right. And it's like the relatability that the audience sees within you. So doing the podcast allows us to have more things that the audience can relate to. So like, for example, I might talk about, oh, you know, went for a skate this morning, and then some listener is like, oh, I love skating. Oh, those guys are way cooler because they skate. And it's like, it seems lame, but that's exactly what people do. And, you know, like when, you know, we can maybe talk about the Call of Duty thing, like, you know, you played Call of Duty as a kid. We both played lots.
I saw your throwing knife compilation.
Yeah. So,
yes,
you know, to get to a point where you're designing for a Call of Duty skin and then coming sort of full circle, like you can imagine that just maybe talk a little bit about that and how that kind of...
Well, look, just quickly on that subject, it's something that Cam and myself don't do very well is this kind of stuff. We don't offer that kind of level of authenticity with our content because it doesn't come naturally to us. We don't put the time aside to do that. So I think that's something that we try and work on, is like showing up on, even on simple things like Instagram stories, it's just us two chatting. Like we don't do it at all really. And I think that it would help our audience see what Friend is. Then there's also the element where you peek behind the curtain a bit too much. And then some people can lose kind of a shine on a brand where you go,
loses the mystery a bit, and it's like
and that balance is difficult because like I feel like a lot of our work is quite like, you know, it's curated and it's polished and that's just what it is. And then if you peek behind the curtain and you realize that it's just two blokes,
it loses that.
I don't know. Like,
does it? I don't know.
But but that's totally up to what people's opinions of it are. And like I think we're too scared to take that leap, but also just again doesn't come naturally to us. But no, the Call of Duty thing came. The New York Subliners are a esports team operating out of New York, obviously, and their creative director reached out to us it was a year ago actually. It was in August 2022. And he found our work on Behance, which is a online portfolio Adobe product. And he said he was just scrolling through the web trying to find a design look and feel that fitted the aesthetic that he was going to go for their look for the 2022-2023 season. So he wanted us to create all of they called it a toolkit. So everything that would go into their graphics for the next year. So what their posters would look like, what their announcements would look like, anything and everything, like stuff they would put on their merchandise and all this kind of stuff. So we did that. It was a 3-month sort of project with them and worked up until sort of November time. And then, it all launched for the season this year from January and all of the content rolled out. And it was really cool to see all of our graphics and all of our design work and all of our like toolkits being used to promote the New York Subliners and watching their esports events and having, you know, everything come up on the screens using the graphics that we created. So it was cool. And then and later this year, Call of Duty released a customized skin for a weapon. So each team could come up with their own skin, and obviously they used the toolkit that we created for them to then promote to create the skin. Sorry, and then you could have that skin inside of the game. So that was a whole nother level of like immersion. Was I'm now in Call of Duty and I'm looking at a gun, because you can inspect your gun in Call of Duty, and it's got
that you made.
it's got our font, like Cam hand designed a font, and we created all these graphics and elements that they use, and it's inside of Call of Duty now, and that was a really cool moment. It was like, wow, we've
full circle for sure.
yeah, because we obviously used to play Call of Duty, like we still do all the time. And I now only rock my own gun.
Yes, of course. Yeah, of course.
You had to buy your own gun.
Yeah,
as
you have
well.
to buy the skin.
You probably had to buy the skin as well.
Yeah.
No, Subliners gave us a little cheeky.
Oh, that would have been funny though. Like, I've got to pay for my own fucking skin.
But that's important to think about those like full circle moments. I don't know whether, like, I remember seeing, you posted when it came out, just saying that it was kind of like a cool moment for you guys. But maybe having a discussion, or maybe even seeing people, if they see this, when you talk about it in a bit more depth and get that peek behind the curtain as to why it means something to you and why that connected, and then that inspires them. Oh, I can do that, because I know Cam's very inspired to do video game music. And
I've been trying for ages, dude, to get into that. I've been on a bunch of websites that for like indie game developers and stuff, and I've been putting up packs for free as well, like writing piano packs, and I even add effects to it, like making it sound like it's coming out of like an old radio that's like from like the 1980s or 70s or 60s, like it's really like warped and stuff, just so that the people don't have to do it themselves. They can just drag and drop the audio file into their video game, and so that's kind of a similar moment I hope to get to myself one day, is that I play a video game and the music on the menu screen, like a boss fight, it's like music I made. Because me and Jordan both do multiple genres. We don't just do heavy metal, so that would be insane. I just want to quickly touch too on what you said about peeking behind the curtain. It's kind of made me feel like when I've downloaded stems before of these bands that are massive, and I've heard their vocals unmixed. And I've gone, oh my God. I was like, I've looked up to some of these vocalists, like they are just
but does
untouchable.
It taint that to you, or does it not?
Well,
is it still...
So I think it's like what you said. It depends on the person, like individual, how they kind of think, right? So with me, because I'm a vocalist myself, it didn't take away anything from what they were doing. It kind of just humanized them a bit and go, oh, okay, so they're not like gods kind of thing. Like their raw vocals were nowhere near as impressive, and they actually, a lot of people do, they're not as loud as they seem on the record. There's a lot of mixing that goes into making them seem like their voice is just insane. Doesn't mean they're not talented, but it just helps me go, oh, okay, so maybe I don't need to try so hard with my vocals. I don't need to try and project so loud, like as long as I got the distortion there, blah, blah, blah. But that's a whole nother chat. So, but if I wasn't a vocalist and I heard those raw stems, and I'd be like, oh, that's crap. You know what I mean? Like it depends on where you come from, I guess. But, just when you said that, it kind of made me feel like I have peeked behind the curtain of some professional bands and got their raw stems and gone, oh my God, it's actually not as impressive as the final product. But
and did they release those stems?
I actually don't know if they get leaked. I don't know how it gets out.
I think they give them to like the mixing studios to give them as learning tools. So, like, if we got it mixed through a certain studio, we could say, "Oh, we'll give the stems out for people to use to learn to mix and things."
If the sort of use got popular and people were going to give us money for our stems, and then other beginner producers can pay for a course to practice mixing them, I'd give stems out.
Yeah,
I have no problem doing that at all.
Well, it's interesting to know that it didn't really affect your point of view on them, because I guess that's the thing that's holding us back from, I guess, sharing a little bit more than we do. And also, there's so many factors into sharing, like things that I see on other designers or other agencies do is like they're in their office space and they're just like, they're filming what does a day in the office look like with the team. We don't really have that option because we're two separate entities working in two separate working spaces. We collaborate every week together, but we're not in an office together. We're not in a really, really cool, exciting space where we can just walk around a warehouse and show you, et cetera, et cetera.
A lot of things are outsourced too these days, right?
Oh,
as well.
Oh, a lot. But
See,
but in terms of just that, like just sharing what a day in the life looks like, I'd love to do that. But it's like I'm just in my house. Do you know what I mean? And there's a certain level of just like that's my space. I don't really want to show people that. And
yeah, totally. And that's why I think that's part of what we're doing. Apart from obviously we do a little bit of behind the scenes clips of making of the songs where we're in the studio jamming and we can just take little clips. Like that's cool. But for the podcast, it's like, we created it to give a educational platform that can give back to people trying to learn stuff and pick people's brains, because we want to know all this stuff.
We never had the option, really.
Yeah, we never had this. And it's like, we're just, we chat about all these things anyway, so why not publicly chat about these things? And then it helps us share a story or two in between it and give us that, like, understanding of who we are. So you might, think of creating like an episode on YouTube where you just curate something for 5 minutes where you're just talking about a topic, and then that's where you just get to talk about a hot topic of the day with whatever it is. But yeah. Cool. Well, I wanted to talk about your merchandising, because before we were kicking off, I was explaining to Cam all the things about this shirt and how you like not only just like the fact that it's heavy cotton, and like that kind of thing is already kind of a bit more expensive than the cheaper shirts, but you've gone ahead and done your stitching into the logos and really made sure it's a quality garment. So maybe just talk through like a little bit in terms of your thought process for creating merch and struggles.
Well, Cameron worked at a clothing apparel brand for a year and a half recently, sort of in 2019, 2020 sort of time.
Good experience.
And he learnt a lot about the sort of manufacturing process. And he's always had a very keen interest in fashion design in terms of like graphic tees, like having sort of prints on tees, or like what his artistry could bring to apparel. Because he's a graphic artist, he's a digital artist, he's a painting artist. Like he can do things that very few people can do with a pen and with a paintbrush, and even digitally. So he was kind of always sort of screwing around with ideas over the past. As long as I've known him, he's always coming up with different ideas for things. And then he was finding that he was the head creator of their apparel at that place. And then when he left, he had a few designs up his sleeve, kind of thing, and transition them to be like, all right, if we're going to make merch, if I'm going to use these merch lines, let's make merch for us, for Friend. And we're like, cool. But what does that actually look like? Is it just buying a t-shirt from what do they call it? From
Etsy or something.
ASOS or whatever.
Yeah.
Putting your thing on it. It's like, no, we don't want to do that. We want it to actually be, because there's a difference between clothing and merch. So merch, I think, is more like, when you buy something that's for like a one-off thing, it might be for a show, or it might be for a gig, it might be for an event. That's merchandise. Whereas clothing or a fashion label, it should be more evergreen. It's about seasonal drops and all these kind of things.
I've never thought of it like that. I like that, dude. I've never.
Yeah,
people do their tours, right? They do they'll do their tour dates, like an Aussie tour, and then that'll be the merch for that tour. Yeah, that's sick. I never thought of it like that.
And merch is more fleeting, right? It's more occasional. It's one-off. It's a one thing buy. You're just buying merch.
Get the stock and get rid of it.
Yeah, very much so. Whereas like we want to actually look into eventually down the road be a clothing line. That's where we see Friend in 5 years' time. Is Friend, when you think of Friend is a clothing brand, or it's something that sells clothing. So that's where we want to head. And I know it's a massive transition from like where we are right now, but that's the goal. And so we're like, all right, we need to actually look into what we want our clothing to look like, feel like, what we wanted to have on it, how do we customize it, all these different things. And that's where like all the elements that make up our merch. Oh, I said merch. You know what I mean? All of our clothing. It's difficult to have it. Is the things like the crop fit, the 300 GSM feel, and the 100% heavy cotton.
You do the
vintage wash. It's all unisex.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely want to do like a crop top for females if they want to have that option.
Or
But like
Jordan.
when I say crop fit, I just mean or Jordan. When I say crop fit, it just means that it's just a little bit shorter than the normal length of a standard tee you get at any kind of store.
Yeah,
And then
cool.
how we get our prints onto the actual shirt is there's so many different ways to apply prints. There's DTG, which is this, which means direct to garment.
Yeah.
Then there's puff paint. There's this new stitching called chenille, which is like that's like fluff fabric. There's
What about
patchwork. There's
sublimation?
embroidery.
Yeah,
Sorry?
sublimation.
Sublimation.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I
Yeah,
haven't heard of that,
but that's
Oh, really?
That's into polyester.
Yeah, it's
I think.
polyester
Yeah.
top, which is crap.
Okay,
Polyester
yeah,
stinks.
yeah. But there's so many different ways you can personalize it, and
Yeah.
that's what we wanted to do with these. Is just not make it feel like a merch drop, but feel like a clothing line drop, and that's hard to do because when you are a service or you are like what we are, it does seem like a merch drop, and that's again comes back to that whole thing about like how do you portray what you're doing. And it's hard when you kind of get pigeonholed as to being we're essentially a photography agency or a design agency, and now they're selling t-shirts, so that must just be merch. And that's really difficult to get people's heads to think, no, we are a brand and we're selling clothing now. We're not an agency who's selling our tees and you just buy a FREND tee and it's like it'll go next summer.
Yeah,
It's no, we want to do drop 2, 3, 4, 5. We want to have
just have
a
heaps
fully
of content, I guess. Don't know,
yeah,
it's
and that's hard too because just to touch on content. I mean, we're circling into another thing about content here, but
I was actually going to move into content, so that's good.
The amount of content that we put out over the last year has all been about our agency work. It's all been very much focused on building our agency. And the thing
that's where all the people, that's what they see, and that's what they'll then think you are.
That's what they want.
Yeah, true. Yeah, that's what's actually been doing well for you too, isn't it?
Correct. And that's the thing people come and want and they come back for. And then you start posting about clothing and they're like, I didn't come here for clothing. I came here for tips on photography. And you go,
yeah,
it's that hard, shift of like, we should be able to do what we want, but we've got to also understand that our audience are there for a certain cause as well.
But I remember thinking, we thought about this with YouTube channels when it was like we create a YouTube channel with like all this main, like, hey, we just do this and this is what you do on that channel. And it was like, oh, can we bring in other stuff or do we create a second channel or do we like, do we need to separate it or can we have fans that come to it?
It's kind of why we chose the podcast to be called Something to Scream About and not the Distorted Views podcast.
That's great. That's really good idea because that is the pigeonholing that you can get yourself into. And I think we're experiencing that right now as FREND. We are very much seen as, what's popped off on us for Instagram and social has been our photography and design work. And now we're selling clothing and people are confused. So we've got to work on that. And we've got to work out how.
Google as a brand does quite a good job at being multiple things. Right? They got Google Robotics. They got Google Cars, right? They do cars as well.
True, but if you'd said to me, what's Google? I'd say it's a search engine.
Yeah, but I'm saying is they're not just a search engine nowadays. They do multiple
they've branched
things.
Out.
Yeah, but so many brands are multiple things. And I think that it just takes that time. And like you said, Cam, it's about putting out the content to explain what you are. And that's what we're currently doing. This is going to take time. You just got to get it people's heads.
I think with the name FREND as well, doing a little bit of human side would actually kind of go with the name, which kind of comes back to branding, I guess, because you do things that match the brand and the aesthetic you're going for. So, we're going for the whole, or what would you call it, like third eye opening, have your own opinion and try not to be manipulated, as well as the teacher kind of like passing down information that we learn and knowledge, you know what I mean? Like we're kind of that open-armed, like, hey, come in here and learn stuff and have an open conversation.
But we're struggling with the fact that in terms of content, like we do a lot of podcasts and we do a lot of tutorials, but we're not playing too many gigs.
Dude.
So we're not able to post us playing all the time, so then people just think, oh, these guys are just podcast guys, or just whatever.
And the podcast gets more engagement than some of the music, and you're like, well, we're a band first.
But it's exactly the same for us. You know what I mean? There's so many different ways you could skin it. Like we don't want to just be a service agency. We want to be a brand, but you kind of got to I guess play the field a little bit until that tide changes.
You should
You
do a
know, like
cyberpunk
people are
text for
always.
us. That'd be so sick.
We yeah, because Cam does all the texts and stuff.
Oh, that was
doesn't
what I was going to ask you. I don't know if you know. You probably know, but like, do you guys do any 3D modeling with Blender or Houdini or anything like that, or is it all Adobe Photoshop?
Yeah, we don't do any 3D work, I'm afraid. No, it's a black spot for us. We don't really dabble in anything 3D, actually. Sorry to
but
deflate your balloon.
you're moving assets often are video, so they are they're already 3D. You're not creating a scene, like you're shooting actual things in life. So it's you're turning like food and all of this into. I remember you animating all these things and creating these.
I think I saw you doing a
stuff.
cup, like pouring liquid out, and the cup was like floating or something. I remember seeing something like that years ago.
The wine bottle pouring without.
Yeah, but
that's all
still imagery.
Yeah,
that's not.
It's not video.
3D in the sense of like actual depth. That's just Photoshop illusion and using 2D images. But 3D is something that I've never actually dabbled in or really thought about dabbling in, because it's almost like one of those fields that's gone so far now that if I was to dabble in it, I would have to seriously hunker down and get really involved.
Yeah.
And just there's only so many hours in the day.
My computer can barely handle it. I need to upgrade my
that's
CPU
another
and
factor
shit.
too, is you need a lot of CPU. But yeah, I mean, we can definitely design something up for you that's just not 3D.
Yeah, well, you've got the 3D stuff down. You can do that all right. That's pretty good.
You can turn something that we make into something 3D.
I can. Yeah, I can.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's cool. Well, like before we sort of like wrap up, I wanted to touch on just like one particular thing to do with your social media.
Okay.
So like when you're thinking about, well, I'll just give a little bit of backstory, because obviously you guys launched as a brand. You've done some good client work, and you're getting recognition in the more what I would call like professional world, where you've got the brands and the marketing guys and the design guys that know what they're looking for, and they can see, this, and they'll hire you. But then you also are trying to transition, like you say, into a more wider audience with people that don't know about this kind of stuff and don't have a company. They just might want to, have a project that they're just doing little bits of design with, or they're, they want to wear a t-shirt, whatever it is. So when you're posting stuff on like your socials and things like this, initially, before you started to get some traction on your reels and business content, like what were you thinking about in terms of how to package your social media? Like, are you thinking, okay, well, I've heard reels are really good at the moment, let's just try and squeeze as much of our content as we can into a reel? Or is it like, are you because your reels are like you're doing you say photography for a so-and-so brand, and then you'll just show a little quick shot of you setting it up, and then you go flick through all of the photos and show what it turned into. And that has been really successful for you. So coming up with that idea and coming up with trying to showcase yourself in the best light, what types of things are you thinking about to catch someone's attention on social media? First and foremost, because it's so quick. Like people's shelf life with things is just like they scroll. How do you stop someone? How do you stop them right there to look at your content?
It's a good question, but I think I always pay pretty close attention to the landscape of social media, whatever is like in the forefront of people's attention. I think if you guys listen to much Gary Vee, you'll kind of like understand that it's where the attention's at is where you need to focus on. And I spent sort of the last 3 or 4 years just really paying attention to what's trending, like what people are eyeballing, what's getting views, and like just really soaking it up and really trying to understand what kind of content works. And I've tried and failed and tried and failed and tried and failed, doing different types of reels, different types of photos, imagery, videos, all these kind of things. And it really is a trial and error until you can see something starting to work. And then when you see that thing starting to work, push it, keep doing it, keep tapping into that thing. And for us, and and there's certain tricks along the way that will help you. Like I was doing a very, very similar style piece of content to the one that's really popped off for us lately, but I wasn't using all of the tricks of Instagram, things like trending songs, things like 7-second optimized reels, things like having a hook, things like using Instagram text to pretty much keep the attention for the first 2 to 3 seconds, which is so important.
Yeah, this is what I was talking about. So these kinds of techniques, without going into your secrets like too much, but
they're not secrets though.
But see, I haven't heard of a couple of those things that you touched on. I know that the text in the first few seconds when someone hits the reel needs to be like engaging, so they read something and you go, you know, photography for cafe, whatever it is, then they know instantly what it is, and then they might be hooked in to see what the final result is once you've taken the photo.
Correct. It's a combination of a few things, because at the start, the whole point of having the text there is so that they have something to read, and that keeps them for at least a second because they're reading it. And then you're more likely to stay if you start reading. So, you know, that's kind of the point of the text. The text is there to just get the initial stop the scroll, essentially. The trending song or the trending audio is something that is so important, and pretty much it's sad because as creators, we want to be able to use whatever music we want. And I tried that at the start, and look, it's just, you just got to play the game. Instagram favors trending songs, trending music, trending audio. So you jump on a real audio or a real music that is trending upwards and has sort of under the 20K views on it. You just got to do your research on how you get these things. You use that song is going to be shown to more people because the algorithm is favoring that song. So those two things combined together, plus you need to have quality content. So this is the thing, like I've seen so many replicas of what I do, but it sounds vain, but they don't have the outcome visually when it drops and they show what they've done.
You can do everything right in the music industry, but if your music's not good,
it's the same thing. It's the same thing. If the product isn't good, then people will just move on. But you know, when the product hits and it goes, wow, it makes you have a reaction. That's where you get the engagement.
Yeah, you reward them for sticking around in the reel.
Yeah. And all these things I've learned from just like, and he does too, for sure. But I mean, all of these things come from honestly just hours of me doing research on and just tasting, trying all these things that Gary Vee tells you to do. Is just like listen into the language, see what's happening, see what's like working out there, see what's not, and trying to replicate that the best you can with your own content, and keeping things short, sweet, snappy, to the point, offer value. You really need to offer value, and that's something that we're trying to work on even more, is trying to offer value, because people go to social media for pretty much two things, value or entertainment. So if you're not entertaining them, you're not giving them value, then
they don't care.
Essentially. And look, we're trying to do the same thing now with a whole different range of content, you know, with merchandise or with our own assets. And look, it's not working nearly as well as it did with our photography and stuff, but it's not going to stop us trying to figure out what will work. We'll keep going, trying something else. So you got to keep pushing what you want to do. I don't think you can be a slave to your niche or the thing that you've been pigeonholed to doing. Don't like respect it, but don't be like a slave to it. If you want to move on, do something else for sure. But
you see that a lot with people who get stuck into like the people want to hear their old music and they want to continue and move on and make new stuff. And it's like, but your old album was good. And it's like, but we want to go this way.
We also grew up as humans. We wrote that album when we were 17. We're now 30.
That's actually a perfect like example of it in your music industry, is literally everyone just screaming for old Drake, old Kanye, old Logic. I want to hear the old stuff. And it's like, well, what about their journey as an artist? Or like, what are they experiencing that's shaping their life to make them want to do different music? And that's similar, man. I think that's very similar for us. Like, we're not all about wanting to do photography for a restaurant every single week now. It's a little bit more than that for us now. That doesn't fulfill us like it did even 6 months ago. And that's just the journey we're on, you know?
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Look, I reckon we'll wrap that up because we could probably talk for ages and go in. But That's super valuable, and thank you very much for sharing all of those insights. Is there anything you want to plug apart from Friend Store, which we'll link in all of the descriptions and stuff, to go and get yourself a cracking t-shirt or pair of comfy socks, which I admit are very comfy. So yeah, there you go. Yeah. So go suss the Friend Store. But is there anything else you want to plug at the moment?
No, I think just Friend on the platforms. We just started TikTok at the moment, just to try and have another avenue, and that's a whole another ball game. So,
yes.
I mean, look, Friend Collective or Friend dot on all of our platforms. It's FREND, Friend without the I. If you are only listening to this,
true.
FREND. Just go check us out, see what we do, and if you have any comments about any of our stuff, send us a DM. We always chat over DMs. So yeah.
Beautiful. No, thank you very much for coming on, and I'm sure I'll see you very soon.
I'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah, I'll see you tomorrow. No, that's
Thanks
awesome.
so much, guys. Love being on. Thank you.
Bye.
Something to scream about.
All right, so we're back. What a great conversation. We ended up continuing the conversation as we normally do afterwards for a bit. But some really cool things to talk about and things to think about in terms of branding and all the things.
Things to scream about.
Yeah, that was a nice round. But yeah, just hearing about all the different struggles in terms of how you represent yourself, and when we've thought about this extensively, and obviously that's what he thinks about every single week. We're still struggling with how to do it, so it's constantly changing, and no wonder everyone else out there is going to be struggling with how to do it or how to think about it.
Multiple industries as well that aren't necessarily tied together, and they experiencing the same kind of problems and workarounds and identity issues, and having to sort of be like, how do we want to be perceived? How do we want to be seen? And it's just it's cool to see, like what we say all the time in the podcast, from musicians to mixing engineers to guitar techs to, pyro people. I don't know, everybody. It's like we're all just trying to do our thing. So,
yeah, no, that was really valuable. Let us know if you like any of the guests that come on and whether you think we should have them back, because we'd be more than happy to invite people back to talk more in depth about anything specific that they go into, because we do keep it relatively short and sweet here in terms of within, we still try and keep it under an hour. We don't want to go
lots of
2 hours.
content. Heavy, we like to, we don't want to have a 6-hour podcast and there's only 1 hour of actual good gems in there. I'd rather have it short and sweet, an hour long, and the majority of that hour is oh, that's interesting, that's thought provoking. Oh, I never thought of it like that before. Even just with the merch compared to branding, I was that kind of made something click in my head. I was oh, I've never thought about it like that.
Totally. And you could then spin off and we did talk about, merchandising and things, and you could just go into a bit of a rabbit hole. So we're more than happy to dive down any rabbit holes that you wish. So just volunteer them up for us and we'll jump in. Otherwise, we'll be back at the end of October, which I think will be the next one. So we'll see you again for the next episode. But otherwise, episode 29 is done and dusted. See you again soon.
Bye.